How I ended that job, I told that story. It'll be posted somewhere if you care. How I got that job, where I was a computer operations supervisor for a really cool company that sold greeting cards on recycled paper, which is kind of a cool idea because you get a greeting card, you know, you get a birthday card or a Christmas card, you look at it, you take the money out, you throw it away. So they were an eco-friendly company. But how I got that job is an unusual story, and what I'm hoping is that I can tell you at least a couple or three things today that you might not have thought about getting a job for, especially a Western company, but not only, because a lot of companies now, especially in Moscow, Russian companies, are still working like Western companies. They have HR departments, they check people's references, and so a lot of Russian companies are now being run in a Western way. So what I'm going to talk about today is a short list of things that you should always do for an interview. The first step, of course, is your resume, and I'm not going to give you a long talk about how to prepare a resume because there are so many places on the web where you can find out, but I'll say a couple of things. Number one, don't use some clever font. Don't try to be like fancy. In the old days when we had paper, some people would print their resume on like pink paper and spray perfume on it. And those resumes, when they arrived to some company's office, would immediately be thrown away. So keep your resume cool, and one thing I highly recommend that you do in preparing a resume is look at your career in terms of accomplishments. It's not always easy right away to decide what things you've accomplished at your previous jobs, but if you spend some time thinking about it, you might be able to put together one or two things you did that saved X number of hours or X amount of money, caused people's work to go faster, and try to put that into a number. And I'll give you an example. When I was much younger, I was working as a computer operator for a different company, and we were bought by some Fortune 500 company, Fortune 400 company, actually. And that entailed moving our offices from near where I lived into the heart of Chicago. When I got to the new office, we used a lot of paper. We printed so much. It was crazy. And I was the guy who was responsible for ordering paper. So I'm in a new office with new surroundings, and I look at the paper invoices and I realize we're paying more for paper than we used to. We have a different company that's bringing us, I mean, literally 2 tons of paper a week, and we're paying X amount more. So I got on the phone and I called up that company and I said, you know, your paper prices are a little bit high. We use a lot of paper. Why are you charging us so much? And they said, oh no, that's the standard. We've been working with your company for a couple of years charging this price, and you know, we can't change that. Okay. So I called the other company that I had worked with before and I said, can you offer us that same price in the city? Well, of course, we deliver everywhere, yeah. So now I called the other company and I said, well, I've got a better offer. I can save X amount. I'll give you a number later. I can save X amount with another company. They deliver to the same place, so I'm just going to switch, unless you can make me a better offer. Okay, so they called back with a better offer. Now I called the old company that I had worked with before and I said, you know what? Actually, at this new office in Chicago, we use more paper than we used to. Can you bring the price down a little bit? Just enough for me to show my boss how cool I am. And the guy's like, yeah, if you order that much paper, sure, we can bring the price down per sheet, per box, a little bit more. I went back and forth with these two guys over the course of about 2 hours. And by the end of it, I went back to my old company, I got a better price, and once I did the quick calculations, one afternoon's work, I saved my company $10,000 a year. So, wow. That's the kind of thing you want to try to figure out if you've done that, and can you put that in your resume. So renegotiated a paper contract, saving the company $10,000 a year. That looks good on a resume. I always put a resume divided into my responsibilities at each job and my accomplishments. Okay, I organized office recycling at another company. Those kind of things. So you got your resume, you started looking at what's available, you send that resume out, and please understand that you should feel lucky if you send out 100 resumes and you get 10 responses, even though you're sending resumes to advertisements that say office manager wanted, or IT guy wanted, or HR person. You're not going to get that many responses. Your resume also, by the way, needs to be prepared in a short way, because the person who receives them receives dozens, if not hundreds, of resumes. And if your resume is 3 pages long, nope, sorry. Have all the important information on the front page. Use a goal, okay? That goal in the first line should be something like to acquire employment at a fast-moving company where I can make use of my skills in interpersonal relationships, mathematics, whatever, right? And actually change the resume a little bit for each company you send it to, so that it looks direct. If this company, if you're interested in a job that's more management IT, for example, then emphasize your management skills. Change the resume. It's a template. Your resume is a template, and you should change that template to reflect whatever different company you're trying to advertise yourself to. Okay, so now you're getting responses, and maybe you have 4 or 5 companies that are interested in talking to you, and it's time to think about the interviews. So, first of all, let me ask you, what do you think the optimum time would be to set your interview?
Early in the morning? Early in the morning?
Early in the morning. What day of the week? You're right.
Tuesday.
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 Thursday's not bad.
Somebody told us about it. It's better to have an interview on Tuesday.
Tuesday's pretty much the best day. It's optimum. And if the company begins work at 9 a.m., then 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Pretty good. If the company starts work at 11, here's the thing. Don't put yourself right in front of that person's lunch, because that's all they'll be thinking about. Don't put your meeting after their lunch, because they'll just be like, what? Right? Don't put it at the end of the day. They're going to be thinking about the stuff they have to do at home, their family, their kids. Don't do it on a Monday, because Mondays are a disaster for everybody. Don't do it on a Friday, because nobody's serious about work on a Friday. Right? And see if you can schedule the companies you don't have as much interest in first. Try to put those interviews first so you can treat them as a practice. Everybody gets really nervous about interviews, and having a little bit of practice under your belt is a good thing. By the way, a little psychological tactic about being nervous for an interview. Okay, I'm going to sound really stupid here, and I apologize in advance for it, but if you try this, you're going to notice something. The emotions of nervousness before an interview, sweaty palms, not being able to think very, very clearly. There's a lot of physiological stuff that your body does, fast heartbeat, when you're nervous. But your body does exactly those same things when you're excited. Excitement and nervousness, physiologically, what your body is doing, are exactly the same. They're in the same part of the brain. So Try this sometime. Try to imagine yourself really nervous. Imagine some situation that would make you horribly nervous. And then, once you feel that feeling, the stomach, the heartbeat, maybe the sweaty palms, then trick yourself and say, I'm excited. And now think about excitement. I was a kid, it was my birthday party, or what. The fact is that if you trick your brain into thinking you're excited, and you probably are, because you're not going to interview with companies that you hate, hopefully. If you trick yourself into thinking that this is excitement, it's not really a trick, it's true. And you will have a different feeling when you go into an interview. So, you're scheduling your interviews, and you've scheduled the good companies for the perfect time. Next week and this week you're going to do some practice interviews. First of all, do your research. If you walk into a company and you don't know what they do, you're done. Your resume, your great resume, wonderful interviewing skills will not help you if you don't have some knowledge about the company. We all know how to use Google. So know what the company does, know what its futures are, and be ready to ask intelligent questions, because your attitude at an interview has to be, I'm considering you. Right? Number one, I'm considering you. Are you good enough for me? You're going to be selling yourself, and they're going to be asking if you're good enough for them. You should be looking at it both ways. Prepare yourself for the questions that they will surely ask you, including, what is your greatest weakness? Right? What is your greatest weakness? Well, I'm a serial killer. What is your greatest weakness? I just work too hard. Oh, come on. Actually, that question is a good opportunity for you to sort of tell a story, if you can. I'm just going to kind of give you a crappy example here. What is your greatest weakness? Well, I was managing a team of 3, and I realized that every time we got close to a deadline, I was pushing my staff too hard, making them nervous, and everybody felt bad for the few days before some deadline. So I realized that, and I started teaching myself how to calm down, and I talked to my boss about his way of calming down, and I used to be really bad about deadlines and make everybody nervous, but I'm getting better at it now. Ooh, wow, that is the kind of thing that they want to hear. Right? You're going to be asked that question 100%, or a question like it, so prepare for it. Think about something that you did badly, but add to the end of the story that you found a solution, or that you are finding a solution. Okay? So this is your preparation for your interviews. Now, for your interview, we are going to dress conservatively. Even if you're applying for an IT job, could you put a jacket on? Or at least a button-down shirt, buttoned, tucked into your pants. Make an effort to look good. Don't smell bad. This is especially directed towards IT people. But it's directed towards everyone. And smell bad means don't wear too much perfume or cologne either. That's fine. Don't go crazy on your nails if you're a woman. Don't wear too much jewelry. Don't dress sexy. Okay? I don't think I need to explain those things any further than that. Arrive to your interview between 10 and 15 minutes early. Okay? Not more. It does not make you look good if you show up a half an hour early. It makes you look desperate. On top of that, it means that now somebody is going to be nervous themselves. Do you want another coffee? Right? Next, get everybody's name. Everybody who you speak to. Even the receptionist, or even if it's some HR person who you can tell isn't super important. Get all their names. Try to get a business card if you can. Try to get their emails. Sometimes you might have to hack a little bit and try to look at the company's website and go to the the column about the people or whatever, but get names and be ready to spell them correctly, because you're going to write a thank you letter after each interview. Now, the thank you letter back in the old days wasn't so important. It is essential now. The thank you letter is the most wonderful tool you can imagine, right? It's so powerful. Actually, most mid-range companies for mid-level jobs,
I'm sorry.
about 70%.
Thank you letter. What is that?
A thank you letter after the interview, I'll explain it in a little bit better detail once I've gone through the interview thing. But a thank you letter is your opportunity to show everybody that you spoke to why you're the right candidate. I'll come back to it in a second. Because the next thing you're going to do is you've arrived 10 or 15 minutes early for your interview, you've been taken in, and you're probably going to interview an HR person and your immediate boss. Most likely, that's what happens in a first interview. So get that HR person's name and email, and the same with your boss. And when you're meeting with both of them, of course, you're still going to be fighting your nervousness, and you might be feeling some excitement, but look around you. Most everybody has something in their office that tells you a little bit about their personality. Maybe they have photographs of fishing trips or children, or they have some books on their shelf that you've read. Don't lie. Don't say, oh, Stephen King, I love Stephen King, when you haven't read any. Right? But if you see the guy's got a few Stephen King books there, go, hey, yeah, what's your favorite Stephen King book? I kind of like, and name something. Create a common bond with the person. Find something you have in common, something that you can mention later to help them remember who you are, because they're going to be interviewing a lot of people. And the most important strategy you can have in an interview while you're talking to them and before and after, you want to communicate the idea that you will make their lives easier. Okay? It's essential. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'll have your job. No. Okay. But you do want to kind of focus on the idea that you are a personable person. You share some common interests, and generally you're the kind of person who is an independent go-getter, and hire me and your life will be easier. I will take care of your different problems. All right. So, there was a company that I was interviewing for that I really did want this job, and the bottom line is that I had been training as a headhunter for several months, and it was the shittiest job I ever had, honest to God. But this headhunter work, me actually being a telemarketer, trying to invite people to take another job out of their safety for my profit, was what I was supposed to be doing. But I was learning interviewing skills and resume skills. So although it's the worst job I ever had, it did teach me a lot about how to interview. And the weird thing is that one day I walked out of the office and I never came back from this headhunting job. Hated it so much. And my boss was actually kind of a cool guy. He calls me up and he says, hey, I'm still laying in bed. It's 10 in the morning the next day. So, and I started to apologize. Sorry, he said, I understand. Look, Neil, I remember that you have some IT stuff on your resume, computer operations. Yeah. Well, look, I've got a client that I usually work with for money, but this time I've got, I know they need the job. They're not going to pay for it, but I know there's an opening. You should send your resume right away to them. All right. So I sent my resume. I got my first interview. I did everything I just told you about. I got my names. I found something that I had in common with who was going to be my boss. It turned out that, we both liked a lot of science fiction authors and stuff like that. So at the end of the interview, after I answered the difficult questions and asked the difficult questions, why is this position open? All right? Is it because the other person quit? Were they promoted? Were they fired? Why do you need a computer operations supervisor right now? Well, you got to ask that question. Okay. At the end of the interview, I always finish an interview with, well, great, nice meeting you. What's the next step? Great way to find out. Well, this is what she said. She said, we're going to continue interviewing people through Friday, and on Monday we'll be making our calls. If by Monday afternoon you haven't received a call, you can call me. Great. Alrighty, so that was my Tuesday interview. And I sent a thank you letter. Here's the thing about the thank you letter. I have never left an interview and not, as I'm walking out the door, remembered something. Oh, shoot. I really wanted to, I didn't talk about, right? So your thank you letter serves multiple functions. Number one, it is your chance to say the thing you forgot to say. Number two, it's an opportunity to apologize for something. I'm sorry I got your name wrong. I'm sorry I shit my pants, whatever. Number three, it's your opportunity to remind the person who you are. It's so cool meeting another person who loves Isaac Asimov. You know, so many people say his characters suck, but I just love the science fiction. All right? It's all of those opportunities. You make the person remember you. They're seeing a lot of other people this week. But your thank you letter reminds them of what we had in common, a mistake you made, something else you wanted to say, and it also shows, yeah, I accept you. You're good enough for me. I want to know, what do we do now? And you should get that interview letter, or that thank you letter to them within 24 hours. But don't do it on the same day. If your interview was on Tuesday morning at 10, then let them have it Wednesday afternoon at 4. So you're in their mind and they remember you again. Okay? Another thing about a thank you letter is it shows you have a certain maturity. It shows that you follow through. It shows that you, if you're looking for a sales job especially, it shows that you close the deal, right? So you're organized enough to send a thank you letter. Do, of course, make sure that if you're writing a thank you letter or a resume in English, that somebody checks it for you so it looks good. Right? Okay, second interview. Oh, by the way, you sent that thank you letter to the HR person and a separate thank you letter to the person who is your boss or potential boss. Right? Anybody you met. And now, second interview. This is what happened to me. The Monday morning phone call. She called me. And she said, yes, we're arranging a round of second interviews. What time is good for you? Tuesday at 10 a.m., I said. And so we had a second interview. And now I met her boss, the guy who was in charge of all IT operations for this company. And once again, I found things we had in common, and I answered the dangerous questions, and I tried to act calm, and I finished the interview with what's the next step. And the next step was, we are doing our second run interviews this week, Monday morning. We'll make a call to you, blah, blah, blah. Sent out my thank you letter to my boss's boss, and the HR person. Just do it. And I got the call. Ooh, third interview. Okay. So third interview, I meet the department head and my boss's boss and my boss and the HR person. And I send out 4 thank you letters. What's the next step? Monday. Monday morning. No phone call. Lunch. Lonely, sad lunch. 1 o'clock. 2 o'clock. No phone call. So I called them and I spoke to the person who would be my immediate supervisor. And I said, so, didn't hear from you. What's the disposition? What's going on? And she said, well, I have to tell you the truth. it was down to 2 people. And you had 6.5 years of experience and he had 7. And we chose him. And I said, well, thank you. And now I'm thinking, oh, man, I'm going to have to do all this interviewing stuff again. So I just said, can you tell me something? How could I have interviewed better? How could I have made that an easier decision for you? You know, what could I have said or what could I have done that would have made you not have to look at 2 resumes? And she was silent for 10 seconds. Right? 10 seconds of silence on the telephone is really long. It feels like an hour. She's dead silent. And I could just hear her breathing. And then she said, could you come to the office within the next hour? Absolutely, yes. By the way, did I mention that I live 15-minute walk from the company? Okay, I'll see you then. All right. So, what do you think happened there? Anybody want to make a guess?
They accepted you.
Well, yeah, I got the job, absolutely. What was it about my question that changed her mind?
You asked for feedback?
I asked for feedback. I asked how I could improve myself.
For a lower salary.
No, I ended up with a fine, normal salary. No, I wouldn't do that, by the way. Oh, one more strategy. Yes, never talk about salary
Usually they ask you one of the first
and tell them to fuck themselves. Oh, sorry. Tell them, I assume that a company as respectable as yours would pay an adequate salary. Do not answer that question. Do not answer that question. Do not answer that question.
They ask very often, what are your salary expectations?
Don't answer.
What do you say?
Say,
No
I assume
comment.
your company would pay the market value for somebody as good as me.
And what if it's not good enough?
Well, you're going to have that idea once you got through the interviewing process. Once you got through that 3rd interview, then it's time to talk turkey. And then you are in a position of power because they've made a decision to hire you. All right? But if you talk salary early on, no matter how much they make you feel like you should, you're screwing yourself. You're either going to put yourself into a position where you're going to have to lower your salary expectations, or you've priced yourself out of the market. Right? Oh, well, we were only planning on paying X amount. Okay? When you get to the negotiation, you can decide if you will actually accept a salary drop, but you shouldn't, and you shouldn't have to. But if you start talking about salary, they start seeing you as a number. Keep some mystery. Right? Don't talk about salary until that final negotiation. Anyway, I got the job because I asked her a question that made her think, wow, this guy's going to make my life easier. He's going to try to improve himself. Right? That's a logical thing to ask. How could I have interviewed better? But it automatically made her start thinking, wow. So he asked that question to a stranger, probably to his boss. He's going to ask, what could I have done better? Or what am I not doing well enough? So yeah, I got there within an hour. And then we did a negotiation. And she said, well, basically, here's the salary that we were planning on paying, the ballpark of it. And I said something kind of cute, like, bring it up 2 or 3% and I will be happy for a year. All right, but we had already talked about how they promote from within, how often they review their employees. So that was kind of a good answer for the final moment. And more or less, that's how I got the job. So, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.